The massive Bitcoin talk is really heating up now, and the next big shock is being prepared here. Here, there's a clear warning about Bitcoin and crypto, and we need to take a close look at this, because there's also pressure to push the digital euro through as quickly as possible, so that cryptocurrencies or any other bad things don't further jeopardize the EU. Plus, there's a new viral tweet from Ursula von der Leyen. Trump's policies shouldn't further endanger the EU. Also, there's a new viral tweet from Ursula von der Leyen. Many interpret this as the EU preparing for the expropriation of citizens. This is also a major shock that's currently being hotly debated. It's being said here that we will turn private savings into much-needed investments. So they will turn your assets into something else here. And we also have to look at whether the wave of expropriation is really coming our way. But first, we need to address the massive Bitcoin speech that's just been released by the EU. And here, they're warning about crypto, specifically about Bitcoin and all the Trump policies. And I already talked about it briefly in the last video, but the speech hadn't been given yet. Now the speech has surfaced, and we absolutely need to take a look at it because what's happening here is really, really dystopian. That is, on the one hand, we have the US, which is completely opening up to Bitcoin. On the other side, we have the EU completely shutting itself off from Bitcoin and even issuing warnings that financial stability in the EU could be at risk because Donald Trump is opening up to Bitcoin. At the same time, new massive financial packages are being prepared by Ursula von der Leyen. So they want to mobilize 800 billion in new money here. Or what does mobilizing mean? It means loosening up new money to get Europe back on track. And that's pretty massive. Inflationary, what's happening here. And that means we have here a monetary policy in Europe that really isn't working. On the other hand, they say that the US, which is now open to new technologies, is the big enemy if they open up to Bitcoin and crypto. Donald Trump is also portrayed very, very badly here. But hey, let's check out the speech now, and afterward, I'll give you a little assessment. I should also mention this is Pierre Gramegna. And this is the head of the European Stability Mechanism, which is simply intended to ensure that the EU is in a good position in terms of currency and is not getting into problems or dilemmas or anything like that. So I think that was set up back after the financial crisis. And now check out what you all have to say about crypto, especially when it comes to Bitcoin, because Donald Trump has really opened up to Bitcoin, particularly with the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Check it out.
On cryptocurrencies, I think we had an excellent discussion which highlighted that what is at stake here is also European sovereignty. The US administration stance on this compared to the past has changed, and the US administration is favorable towards cryptocurrencies and especially dollar-denominated stablecoins.
So what he's saying now is that they had a really, really good discussion about cryptocurrencies. And what's at stake here is the sovereignty of Europe, the sovereignty of the euro. And the US has now changed its position. In the past, they were pretty dismissive of cryptocurrencies. And now they're totally open to cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin. But he also emphasizes stablecoins. And that's really, really interesting. So you can see that they feel threatened now. And as a counter-response here for the US, which is opening up for freedom technology. So are they trying to push through the digital euro? Christine Lagarde said it on the 25th. I think it was in October of this year that the digital euro is supposed to come. I already said in my video back then that I don't believe it's going to happen on the 25th. I think October is just supposed to be the end of the test phase or something like that. I think that would also be misinterpreted in some ways. And even if they wanted to push it through, I can't imagine that they would be able to get this through by the 25th October, because that is also a big bureaucratic apparatus and so on. And you can't just quickly implement a digital euro or something like that. So she clearly talks about how the digital euro is supposed to come. But that's exactly the controversy. This means that CBDCs are now banned in the US and Bitcoin is allowed in the US. And in Europe, it is exactly the other way around. CBDCs are allowed and promoted, but Bitcoin isn't banned. However, Bitcoin is being fought against and they're creating an enemy image around it. That's always the thing. So if they want to ban Bitcoin or something, they've already noticed that, okay, they can't really do it legally, but they can frame it. They can create an enemy image. That's always been my theory. Sooner or later, when the EU falls apart, the argument will come up that all the Bitcoiners are so bad because people are fleeing from the euro because of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is seen as a safe haven currency. It's labeled as a flight currency because people are now fleeing from the euro. Is Bitcoin responsible for the EU hitting the wall, the euro hitting the wall, and so on? Is this a conspiracy theory? I don't know. You can write in the comments below whether you agree or disagree. It could also be that things turn out differently later. I'm completely wrong about that, but that's what I see happening right now, that the framing is being set up and Bitcoin is being pushed into a shady corner. But listen on.
Which may raise certain concerns in Europe. It could eventually reignite foreign and US tech giants' plans to launch mass payment solutions based on dollar-denominated stablecoins. And if this were to be successful, it could affect the euro area's monetary sovereignty and financial stability. Therefore, the ESM supports the European Central Bank's urgency in making the digital euro a reality to safeguard Europe's strategic autonomy. This digital euro is today more necessary than ever. And we also welcome as ESM and support the initiative of the Commission to relook at the MiCA directive, which could prove key here to counter some of the effects that we have.
This is the key point here, where we need to delve deeper, to understand the underlying factors, to see some of the effects. We need to thoroughly assess various aspects and dimensions. But the crazy thing is that people just don't seem to grasp the full extent of the situation, which is quite surprising and perplexing. There's already Bitcoin, it's already the best store of value and all that. You can't really compete with Bitcoin or anything like that using the digital euro. Of course, he's also talking about stablecoins. That's important to mention. It's mainly about the competition with stablecoins. And then I understand the argument, at least to some extent, even though the euro area will still be completely behind the dollar. I said this before. Here, the stablecoins are going to be much more widely accepted by people than the digital euro because the US has realized, hey, you can't just, should I say, CBDC through the public sector, giving it to people, but if you do it through private means, people are much more likely to accept it. I'm also a bit critical, especially when it comes to the whole stablecoin story, because stablecoins still mean that we have fiat money. Stablecoins still means that we have someone who can print the money in the background, because stablecoins is nothing more than a representation of a US dollar, but now held on a blockchain via USDC, or stories like Tether or Circle and stuff like that. And I almost feel like the EU is actually starting to panic here. This means that we are now really seeing the EU in panic mode, which now doesn't know what to do next. Like push through some digital Euro shitcoin or something like that. And the crazy thing is, also here in the speech, just like in Christine Lagarde's speech, there was again zero talk about the advantages of the digital euro. They only talked about how we absolutely need this, that the US is really, really bad, and we have to push it through even faster because otherwise something's going to happen with the US, and the US is going to overtake us. So it's just spreading fear, saying cryptocurrencies are really bad, Donald Trump is bad, the US is bad, everything else is bad, and we're the best. But their own product isn't being highlighted. That's always what I find. Very, very alarming. For example, if you don't highlight your own product and say, for example, hey, I have a great product here, which is centrally limited to 21 million censorship resistant. Those are just, let's say, the basic features that are so convincing that you can't really say no to them. But the EU doesn't have anything like that. There aren't really any great fundamental features of the digital euro that you could point to and say, okay, hey, you've got a good store of value here, it's censorship resistant, it gives you more freedom in your life or something like that. That kind of thing doesn't exist. And that's why we have to take a different approach here. Instead of highlighting the advantages, we create an enemy image and work through fear. The whole digital euro story has to be said again and again. It is also very, very good marketing. That is, the digital euro, it's hard to see, but on the other hand, it brings a lot of people to Bitcoin. From that perspective, I see it pretty relaxed. So the digital euro can't really threaten Bitcoin or anything like that. But it's not just Bitcoin that the EU is targeting. I'd say they're generally firing against freedom. And now there's actually a new tweet from Ursula von der Leyen that definitely confirms this, although there are various interpretations of it. Well, that sounds really, really dystopian. She writes here in the original, we'll turn private savings into much needed investments. So in German, it says, we will convert private savings into urgently needed investments. So it's also mentioned here that Europe has all the prerequisites to take the lead in the race for competitiveness. This month, the EU Commission will present the Savings and Investment Union. And we will work with our institutional partners to get the project off the ground. What we have here is basically the statement, okay, hey, we want to get our hands on your savings. It could really be that all of this is simply worded strangely or incorrectly. Maybe they just didn't express themselves clearly here. But a lot of people interpret this as a wave of expropriation that could be coming our way. I saw this from Nico Judge, who actually categorized it very accurately. We're obviously talking about financial repression. So when they say they want to get their hands on savings here, so more inflation, more taxes, more surveillance, and more rules for the citizens to mobilize their savings. That's a word that Friedrich Merz has already used. He said, we want to mobilize the citizens' savings. That's just how it is. That means they're not talking about expropriation or theft or anything like that, but rather about mobilization. They don't talk about debt anymore. They talk about special funds. Here he goes on to say, to make it crystal clear, a photo of Lagarde. I wish you an enjoyable time. So down here, you can see a photo of them with Ursula von der Leyen and Christine Lagarde, showing off how well the EU is doing on its path. On one hand, there's the digital euro, and on the other hand, you've got some kind of investment mobilizations, or whatever. I mean, you have to be a bit careful here. Could very well be that this is just being misrepresented, or poorly worded, or something like that. So feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments below. Just drop a comment below, hey, do you think the wave of expropriation is coming our way? I mean, the wave of expropriation, it's pretty clear that it's coming our way. I mean, the question is just in what form is it coming our way? But feel free to write in the comments below whether this tweet is being interpreted correctly when they say, okay, hey, they want to expropriate even more. Or is this just poorly worded? I mean, yeah, I don't want to accuse anyone of anything, but the direction we're seeing in the EU is definitely a bit concerning. That means with the whole digital euro, they're positioning themselves against freedom tools. And then they keep throwing out tweets and stuff like that. So it's never been a better time to get into Bitcoin. And even if the Bitcoin prices go down, forget all that. Bitcoin is also a hedge, an opt-out, where you have a monetary system that can't be controlled by some bureaucrats in an ivory tower or anything like that, that can't be censored, and so on. So even if Bitcoin currently has a weakness for kissing, then just be aware that Bitcoin is a tool of freedom here, and accordingly, if you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll give you a link below. 21 Bitcoin, how you can easily, safely, and simply buy Bitcoin. I've also noticed that in the last few days, you guys have really been buying Bitcoin. How crazy is it that the prices have also gone down a bit now? With the code, you can get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. Here, there are some really great features like auto wallet transfer, limit orders, savings plans, and much more, so definitely check it out. Greetings from El Salvador.